Galak-Z is one of those games that should be right up my alley. It's a shoot 'em up with roguelike elements that has a great sense of presentation and has a good difficulty to it. If you follow this channel at all, you know that is seemingly a game that I should immensely enjoy. But beyond my enjoyment, the question becomes if the game specializes too much to the hardcore challenge crowd, and if the challenge in the end is really worth your time. Does the game's combat carry it through the end? Or is there actually a different mechanic that becomes the main focus of the game after all is said and done? Before answering that in this review, I want to make sure that you guys know that this key was obtained from the developer 17-Bit Studios. Keep that in mind as I go forward. Let's start with the premise and the basic idea of the story. This is the typical affair that you'd see from a space and warlike plot in essence. There's an evil empire, they are systematically taking over the solar system it seems, and eliminating anyone who's getting in their way. You are ATAC, a new pilot just so happened to take a little bit of a special ship in the chaos of the battles that have been going on. He runs into Beam and the USS Excellius, and basically they need to warn the Earth about the incoming invasion and find a way to stay alive in the end. Now in terms of the story, it's rather basic. However, what stands out is the characters. In particular, Beam and ATAC work well together, as the back and forth banter at the start of the mission works well. The voice actors do well into bringing their characters to life with their sass, but make sure that they don't go over the top in terms of the performance.
I need you to provide a distraction.
I'm not bait, Beam.
You're not the bait, you're the lure.
Isn't that like the same thing?
Head to the machinery and blow it up, then I'll reel you in.
That's not even how fishing works.
Now presentation-wise, it's probably the strongest element about Galak-Z. The game is presented in a TV show anime season style, with it being set over 4 seasons, which I will allude to later, and even having an old school television menu as a pause screen. The art is well done with the characters, and there's some good graphical effects with the smoke and explosions that are created. However, what I really like about this is the character portraits during the missions. When in the cockpit, you'll see ATAC and the other pilots as they react to the battle that's going on. If you boost forward, he'll be moved back in his seat. If you fire your lasers, you'll see the glow of them in the background. If you kill an enemy in the middle of them saying something, they'll get cut off. It's a nice presentation touch, despite the fact that you probably should be paying attention to everything else but that. As for sound design, I've heard that there's a good soundtrack from others who play the game, but really for me, it hasn't really stood out, but that's a good thing. It does good by the game, as it complements what's been going on screen with the sound design of the ships firing and explosions in the background without taking over the situation. You're supposed to feel the vastness of space, and it does the job to complement what's going on, but not going a little bit too overboard with it. But presentation and sound design aside, what you're going to be here for in the end is of course the gameplay. Now let's start with the basic concept. Each season the game has 5 episodes that are procedurally generated. Some missions have a specific goal that will always be the same, but others could vary in terms of picking up a data cube or destroying a satellite, for example. But each episode is simple. Do the objective, get to the warp point after it's complete with taking as little damage as possible. Now, why is that so important? Because of the main mechanic regarding episodes. See, if you die during an episode, you start the whole season over again. There is a rare exception to this rule that's really hard in my experience to pull off, but needless to say, it can be over for you rather quickly. Now, there are these things called crash coins you can find during missions. If you were to fail a season and start it over, any crash coins that you find during that failed attempt turn into salvage to start the next attempt with, where you can buy more power-ups to start that season with. This gives the idea of optimizing your failed runs so that you get a little bit more when you start the next run. As for the combat, let's start with the controls, because this will be the first hurdle to get over in most cases. The left stick controls where your ship looks, and you control the propulsion of the ship by hitting the R2 button. Now you can boost with the R1 button to give yourself a little bit of speed, and there's an overheating mechanic so you don't use it all the time. Although you never really ever feel out of the boost if you can use it correctly in bursts, as it replenishes rather quickly. You also get the ability to strafe in the first season, and that's where things get a little bit weird. Now, strafing is used to keep pointing towards a specific area of the screen that you are pointing at the moment, so you can keep on firing at that specific location. With the necessity of movement while fighting though, it takes a long while to get accustomed to it. In particular, you'll learn to get the idea of hit and run tactics going, keeping your foe at a distance, and just basically avoiding damage altogether in your regular ship form. And why is hit and run tactics important? Because your ship has shields that can regenerate given enough time, but once they are popped, your ship can take damage to its health. Now that damage to your health, a lot harder to recover because it doesn't recover over time. You can buy health at the shop, which salvage that you can find on the missions, and there's a rare health pack in the field that you can find, but let's just say that you'll feel the fact that health is not a plentiful quality in the end. And so you need to keep those shields up and run away when they are down. Now, your weaponry consists of 2 different ship modes. Let's start with the basic ship. First, you have your ship's lasers, which can be spammed on any enemy. Then you also have your missiles, which requires you to lock onto your enemy for a period of time and then let them go. Now, missiles do the most damage in the end, but you only have a limited supply of them, and they're not necessarily good against enemy shields that can regenerate. Now, you can find upgrades in the field for your lasers and missiles while you sort of explore the map. Now, these laser upgrades are important because they can really change the way that you combat enemies. They can give you fire effects, they can bounce off of walls, and really in the end you need all the help you can get with your lasers because they're going to be your main form of attack when you're in your ship form. But you also have something called your mech form, which you gain in Season 2 of the game. The mech form is more melee-based combat, and has a grab and throw mechanic to grab enemies to start taking whacks at them or throwing elements of the environment around you at them. It also has a shield to block enemy attacks with, and you can reflect some bullets thrown at you with the mech when swiping your sword at them. And the thing is, the mech is a lot more fun, at least in my opinion, than the ship. Okay, so the basic question is, how does the combat play out in terms of the gameplay? Well, it's alright. See, combat can be challenging, and in particular with the damage mechanics, things can go off the rails rather quickly if you're not careful. Simple enemies in small groups aren't any problems once you get a handle of the controls, which do take a while. But it's the bigger enemies, and in particular the bigger enemies in combinations with each other, that pose a real problem. And that's where the stealth element of the game comes in. Stealth? Yeah, you heard me, stealth. You see that circle around your ship? That's the circular noise that you make. You use boost or you switch into the mech mode, for example, and you'll end up making more noise. If enemies come into that circle's radius, basically they can detect you. Now you can sneak around enemies in the game, and that's something that just doesn't do well for me in this particular game. Now look, I get it, different playstyles, and I've always been a fan of different playstyles. But honestly, you're a giant mech and a ship, why in the hell would you want me to play stealthily? Well, you sort of have to. Bigger enemy combinations will tear you apart without the right upgrades. It really becomes a situation of live to fight another day kind of thing. And that's what the game has me doing and sort of going back and forth on it. On one hand, I love games that force me to play differently and go to different playstyles. But in this specific case, this case feels different. I feel like the combat situation here will get you killed more often than not, regardless of how skilled you are. There will be times that yes, you can't get over the situation and you have to fight regardless of how stealthy you are, whether it be at the objective or at a waypoint when you're trying to get out of the mission. But the other times, stealth is usually the better option, and I really don't think it works for the overall elements of the game. The game becomes somewhat of a hit and run game. Once your shield depletes, you need to not take damage because it's so hard to regain health. But keep in mind this, most of your opponents, they also have shields. And so you have to hit them too. And so it becomes this sort of dance. Can you take out their shields without putting yours in danger? That's harder than it sounds, especially with the right combination of enemies. And I keep on coming back to this fact because combinations of the enemies is really what's going to deal you the damage in the end. While being reckless can lead to your death, for example, it's the combination of those big enemies that take different tactics that will really bring the deaths on in the end. For example, one enemy, you'll probably do better strafing against it, but another, it's better to charge at it. Those two in combination with each other, you see where the problem lies there. Now the game is hard, it's challenging, and even for me, that's somebody that likes a challenging game and usually plays on hard difficulties, it's almost too challenging. You most likely will die a lot. And even with me, who likes these games, I found myself getting frustrated with the repeating of seasons over and over and over again. See, this is why I think you're going to see a lot of different score combinations for this game. It all depends on how you play the game. If you're a stealth-based player, you're probably going to enjoy this a lot more. And if you really get a handle of the controls, you'll probably enjoy this a lot more than, the regular player. People with very short tolerance spans for difficulty or frustration are going to hate this game. You are going to die, you are going to have to restart, and you're probably going to die from repeated attempts too. Now, not to say that the combat isn't fun, it really is. When you're going around, flying at enemies and trying to take as little damage as possible or running and coming back in to do the damage, it can be rather exhilarating. Using the best tactics that you can at your advantage, you can really take out some of these enemies with rather good precision. When you get a handle of the controls, it becomes fantastic when you are put into those situations that you have to put in a firefight. But that's the thing, that's if you have to. And the thing is, you're probably going to lose those fights eventually. But there's one big problem I need to address here, and this seems to be sort of coinciding with the kind of playstyle you have. Now, while playing through the game, I noticed performance problems myself. And specifically, I noticed some significant performance problems even after the day 1 patch. Okay, it was day 0 patch, but keep that in mind. Now, take this with a grain of salt, as some people haven't apparently seen the problems that I have. Now, I believe this is going to be based on your combat style. From the people that I've talked to, basically getting up close and personal and getting sort of right into the battle is where people have noticed some significant performance problems. You'll notice in this clip compilation that, well, some of these, slowdowns and some of these problems aren't exactly small either. The game will slow down, but at other times it was full up stuttering for a couple of seconds. In an action game, that's killer, and it would happen at the most inopportune of times in the middle of battle, the last place that you really want it to happen in. This stops momentum right in its tracks, and unfortunately, that can make your game miserable in the end because, of course, if you die, you have to start all over again. In the end, there is a bunch of good elements behind Galak-Z, but I think there's stuff that drags it down as well. The thing is, if you don't like difficult games, Galak-Z is something to stay far, far away from. And even if you do, there's some issues regarding gameplay that will make you want to stay away. On the other hand, if you do like sort of a challenge and you can really get accustomed to what's going on screen, you can have a blast. The style helps the game a lot, and those who don't get frustrated with games easily will find a challenge under the surface here. But with the technical issues, and in particular with the back and forth gameplay that doesn't seem to complement each other at times, I have to give the game a 6.5 out of 10. Now, I want to be clear about something. If the technical issues are fixed, this puts the game into 7.5 territory, because it makes that much of a difference in the end. It's fun, I will admit that, but at the end, I felt like the game was playing itself at times, and that the randomization element was a little bit too randomized, if you know what I mean. Anyway, that's the end of this review. If you liked what you saw from this review, you can always hit that like button, share the video, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz. Now, if you have played Galak-Z and you want to comment on this video, I would leave your comments in the comment section below, of course. I always love discussing games, especially because its experiences can be so different from player to player. In the end, Galak-Z was an enjoyable time, but I would go a little bit far to say that it gets a strong recommendation from me. It's a very specific recommendation. Anyway, thanks for watching, keep on gaming, and, just enjoy life, guys. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this content and want to see more of it, you may want to hit that subscribe button on the left-hand side. If you like this video and want to see more of this content, take a look at this video on the left-hand side as well. And if you missed my last video, take a look at the right-hand side. Once again, thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.